lots of politics to speak about in a moment, but first of all, that first front page we read out, the Nottingham attack victim, Grace Amalikumar, has been granted the George Medal. Very important.
Yeah, we understand, yes. And on this programme last year, her parents talked to us here on Good Morning Britain, talked about what an honour recognising her courage would be.
It was in her nature to stand by her friend. She's always been nothing but a supportive, honourable girl. So, you know, we have to be honest with you. We're humbled by the suggestion that she should be recognised for her bravery.
Or the George Cross.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that we called for. It wasn't even on our radar, and we are totally humbled.
That was in May of last year. Andrew, Kevin, I mean, as we were saying earlier, it doesn't change anything about the horror, the tragedy of the attack, but it recognises something very significant in Grace.
And it's the highest civilian honour for bravery, and I think it's a tremendous tribute to her, and it will be wonderful for her parents. Nothing brings her back, but that young girl didn't hesitate to try and defend her friend who was being savagely attacked by the deranged knifeman, and she lost her own life in the process. It was a remarkable selfless act, because she could have walked away.
Susanna, she was an athlete. She'd played hockey for England.
Yeah.
I'm sure she could have outrun the killer, but she didn't. She stayed to defend her friend and lost her own life. And if that's some comfort to her family, then you're thrilled for it. We can't turn the clock back. Sadly, terrible mistakes were made by the health service and by the police in the run-up to that, because the paranoid schizophrenic, other offences were reported, wasn't taking medication, nothing was done, and 3 people lost their lives. Ian Coates, the school caretaker, also died. Others were injured, and it was just horrific, absolutely horrific. But if that medal, and it's for exceptional bravery, which came out in court, she stayed, stopped doing this, and then fought the killer and died. God, I feel, just thinking about it. But that's so I'm pleased. I'm very pleased for the family.
And they'll. It's a small thing, but they'll go to the palace, or they'll go to Windsor Castle, and the King or the Duke, the Prince of Wales will give them the award, and I think it's fabulous for them. Small comfort, but comfort nevertheless.
Well said. And you know, the 3 victims and their families remain in our, in our hearts at every stage. And as you say, Kevin, you can't think about what happened on that day without it grabbing you again. And the thought that someone could stand their ground when they had the opportunity to run away, it just kind of fills you, doesn't it, with a sense of, my goodness, the bravery, the courage, the selflessness that would have taken in a moment where, your instinct might have been to preserve your own life, but to stay and protect your friend is just, it's extraordinary. And it is well deserved by Grace, and if only they'd all survived. Let's turn our attention then to what is happening there in Manchester. Kemi Badenoch, under enormous pressure, last week she was basically dismissed by the Prime Minister. He didn't refer to the Conservatives until the end of his speech, and we were sitting there, I was sitting there in the hall, and he said, Conservatives, remember them. So now she has to remind people why the Conservative Party is worth voting for in the next set of elections, Andrew. What do you expect she's got to do this week?
Well, people don't know who she is. That's part of the problem. There was a report in one of the papers yesterday about focus groups in the last week where nobody knew the name of the Conservative leader. So focus groups are groups of floating voters. They didn't know her name. Extraordinary. She is an extraordinary figure in the sense she is the first African heritage party leader in this country, so she's very distinctive in many ways. They had no idea who she is, and it's partly because she took this decision when she became leader that she was going to be low profile. She wasn't going to talk about keep coming up with lots of policy ideas which could be torn apart or nicked by Labour or nicked by Reform. She wanted to reflect and think. But actually what she really did was a passable impersonation of a submarine. She disappeared beneath the waves, disappeared beneath the radar, and people forgot all about the Conservative Party, which is why it was a laugh-out-loud moment last week in Keir Starmer's conference speech when he said, do you remember the Conservatives? I think they now know the strategy was the wrong one, so she's now got to make up for a year, because she's been party leader for 1 year next month, and she's now got to start telling the people who she is and what she stands for and what the Tory party believes in, bearing in mind they were chucked out in the worst defeat in the Conservative Party's history after 14 years in power, with huge failings on immigration in particular. They were punished for it badly, and they're now trying to make a big play on immigration, and people are a legitimate criticism for Reform and Labour will be, well, why didn't you do that when you were in power?
The interesting thing, Kevin, there was some polling in the Telegraph at the weekend from Strategy Merlin, looking at different potential Tory leaders against Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is ahead of all of them, but actually Kemi Badenoch does best. She does better than Boris Johnson, better than James Cleverly, and markedly better than Robert Jenrick. The numbers are Farage 42, Badenoch 33, and then Farage 45, Jenrick only 22. If you are polling people on who would be a better Conservative, a better choice between those two, Farage or a Tory leader. So Kemi Badenoch is under pressure, but is the mood there that if they change the leader quickly, things would improve? Or is this just the challenge of being the Conservatives having been 14 years in power?
Yeah, I think that's the bind the Conservatives are in. They've got a leader nobody knows about, as Andrew has said, and the one nobody knows about does better than the others. And you can see him down in the polls, sometimes third, sometimes fourth, with the Liberal Democrats some way off. Nigel Farage is haunting this conference the way he did Labour last week. But the significance of next month is she can be challenged after a year. But I think here there's defiance in all the speeches when you listen. People, the Conservatives are the answer to the country, as if all the mistakes of the 14 years, by and large, didn't happen. But are people listening at all? And you go around this hall, because it's the centenary of Margaret Thatcher's birth. There's lots of Thatcher here. He's been bowing and kneeling below her dresses. There's lots of memorabilia. Go over at the official gift shop, which is that way, and the Thatcher tat, as it were, key rings, all that type of stuff which you get at party conferences. Didn't see anything for Kemi Badenoch. And it's almost as if they think they don't want to be left with a load of unsold merch if she's outed. And she's got to break through. She's quite an interesting person when you chat to her and look at her. But she's also accused of arrogance. Others say she's lazy. Others just say she's out of touch. But is there the appetite in the Conservative Party to try and change leaders again? I think they're still stalked by the year in 2022 of 3 leaders, 3 prime ministers in a year, which they lost all credibility over.
Yeah, and people are talking about leadership here because the Tory party is addicted to talking about leadership. But I don't feel in my bones, I don't sense there's going to be any move against her anytime soon. There's hugely important elections in May in Wales, Scotland and England, where Reform are expected to make massive gains at the expense of Labour and the Tories. That's when that will be a critical moment for Kemi Badenoch. Also for Sir Keir Starmer, I might add, if it's very bad for Labour too. That's when she could be in dire danger. Also, people say to me here, her response to the budget, because she will respond to the budget, Rachel Reid's budget, she will respond to it as Leader of the Opposition, has to be forensic, it has to be almost red hot, because I think this budget is going to be really, really unpopular with the voters. So if she can deliver a really coherent and forensic approach to the budget, that could help start to rebuild, tell people who she is. It's a really big test for her.
Well, I find it quite interesting when she's now denouncing policies that she was backing when she was in the cabinet and introduced, particularly on climate change, clean energy and so on. She was the business secretary when targets were set for electric car sales. I mean, it must cause a hell of a shock to her when she's denouncing them.
But Andrew, just on this comparison with Robert Jenrick, because the newspapers are full of Robert Jenrick, his leadership bid, he's really popular, he'd be the one who would win the contest. The polling I was reading out there from voters and also Conservative voters is he lags well behind Kemi Badenoch in a choice over Jenrick versus Farage, Badenoch versus Farage. Is the mood in Manchester amongst the activists that we think that Jenrick would do a better job, or is his sort of campaigning for the job so publicly, is that doing him damage?
I think it might be. Someone said to me here, is Robert Jenrick on manoeuvres? What's his current job? He's the justice. He's got the justice portfolio. But you'd think he was the shadow foreign secretary. You'd think he was the shadow home secretary because he parks his tanks on so many other shadow ministers' lawns. But someone said to me, is he on manoeuvres? They said, is the Pope a Catholic? Oh, my God, he's on manoeuvres everywhere. He is absolutely omnipresent. He's ubiquitous. He is campaigning very hard to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, even though there isn't a vacancy.
Yeah, and look, as an outsider, politically, I'm not a natural Conservative.
If
the answer is
not a natural Conservative,
if the answer is
you're a natural
to be
lefty.
Robert Jenrick, I think they're asking the wrong question. Because he is a Nigel Farage figure now without the beery charm, well, sorry, people are going to vote for the real thing. The real, the Farage himself, rather than a tribute act. Of course, it's not very long ago as well. Jenrick was very much a one-nation Conservative, very different to the.
He's
Robert
been on
Jenrick.
a journey. He's been on a journey.
That's why he's known as Robert Generic, because he'll be whatever you want him to be.
I heard him tell a BBC reporter yesterday, can't you come up with some better questions? It's a boring question. Andrew, he doesn't like to be reminded of the fact that he might be the next leader of the Conservative Party, or he might want to be, or he once campaigned to be. Apparently you can't ask him about it. It's all over.
But he's not the only person who's been complaining about asking silly questions. The leader, Kemi Badenoch, yesterday came out with her new migration plan to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, to deport 150,000 people a year if there was a Conservative government. And she was asked by Laura Kuenssberg yesterday on the BBC, where will these people get deported to? Which countries are going to be willing to receive the 150,000 a year deportations? Because in the case of Rwanda, they only managed 4, and that was voluntary.
Well, they are relevant questions, and look, it's a great headline. It shows ambition that the Conservatives want to get to grips with illegal migration, the number of people who shouldn't be here, 150,000 a year, American-style deportations. They've seen the success Trump has had, but Trump's just shifts them back to Mexico, where they came from. She couldn't tell you where they're going to go to. She said they'll go back, but if there isn't a return agreement with the country, how are you going to make them go back? Now, there's talk that there will be sanctions on visas with countries. If countries, say it's India, for instance, refuse to take them back, there will be sanctions on visas. But that's the detail that we didn't get yesterday.
She's got no credibility on that. Because she couldn't answer those questions. You just dream up a nice, big, large, round figure of 150,000. Well, also, they're not all committing crimes or hurting people. Very, very few are. So I think she's got to be careful with her language like that when you demonise people. But if she's enthralled to Trump, she should remember, one, Trump is incredibly unpopular in the UK. And secondly, there is huge disquiet and unease and revulsion in the US that lawful citizens, American citizens, are being arrested, detained and then wrongly deported by these paramilitary squads where there is no justice.
Yeah, but he seemed to be having a real success on illegal migration.
Only by MAGA base, the people who shut their eyes to what is happening in communities.
I don't think that's right, McGuire. I think what he's doing on migration, I think he's had a real success on migration, and that's what she's trying to do. She's even going to name the force similar to the American force, and it will be a Trumpian-style approach. But I do think they've got to be a bit more specific. If we are going to deport 150,000, good, but we do need to know where they're going. Yeah,
this is where shadow ministers are shadowing Nigel Farage and Reform now. For instance, in the local elections, they kept saying we're going to have Doge. This is the efficiency leg of the Trump administration, supposed they're going to save loads of money, didn't. And of course now you see they said we're going to come in, there's going to be loads of diversity officers to cut in local authorities. They're finding not. And then you read the front page of the Financial Times today, and Reform, which run Kent Council, are very likely to put up council tax because they just come up with because look, most local authorities are cut to the bone.
I can see behind you there is a Union flag on one of the display boards there. And Chris Philp, who's another shadow minister, proudly wearing a Union flag socks. Meanwhile, Gary Neville, a football commentator and also someone who joined the Prime Minister for a political broadcast before the general election for a Labour Party political broadcast, has announced, so following the Manchester synagogue terrorist attack, he posted a 3-minute video claiming the British public is being turned on each other, accusing angry, middle-aged white men of dividing the country by using the Union flag in a negative fashion, and revealing that at one of his development sites, his property developer, there was a Union flag put up, and last week he took it down instantly. Let's have a listen to the post that he posted in the wake of the attack. Andrew, is it angry, middle-aged white men causing division in the country at the moment?
Are these the same angry, middle-aged white men who cheered on Gary Neville when he played for England and played in the England football strip? What an outrageous slur. I just think it's appalling. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't understand why we have to demonise
exactly what he's talking about.
And who are these white, middle-aged angry? Is that me? I've got a very small Union flag in my kitchen. Am I demonising people with it?
He knows that there are some people, not all white middle-aged men, and you can't criticise or question the patriotism of Gary Neville, who represented England and is incredibly proud.
But he was probably proud to have all those hundreds of thousands of people cheering him on in his England shirt, waving their flags in the football match.
Some people are putting up the St George's Cross, as it tends to be in England. They're putting it up to be provocative and to voice prejudice. Now, if it's pride, absolutely wonderful. I love it at football matches, or you get big international tournaments, and people put flags on their cars and out their windows.
On their foreheads.
That is all right.
Oh, that's okay.
Of course it's okay, but if somebody is waving a flag in the face of somebody else to say, go home, I hate you, that isn't all right.
Well,
yeah, if it's pride, yes. If it's hate, no. Now, he will know what's going on in his building site. We don't. He will know. He will know who put that up and why they put it up. So he's right.
I think it's a slur.
Well, Kevin,
on middle-aged men, on white middle-aged men.
You know you are misunderstanding what he said. He is not saying all white middle class.
It's a classic generalisation. It's a classic generalisation, and it's an outrage.
Kevin, the reason that it's caused offence for a lot of people is because it's in the wake of an attack which certainly wasn't a middle-aged white man.
No, you're quite right, and I'm sure he's spoken out about that too. Yeah, we're here in Manchester, and there was a terrible murderous attack on the synagogue. 2 people were killed. Certainly a terror attack by an Islamist. You're quite right. But across Britain, if you want to bring people together in communities, and you want the Jewish community, the Muslim community, Christian community, atheist community, the Sikh community, the Hindu community, whatever your religion, whatever your background, whatever your heritage, we want people to live together peacefully and with respect. Wherever there is provocation, that requires tackling. And you're quite right. I'm sure you denounce that synagogue attack, but you can't also be blind that there are some people who are racist and look like us, who are white. There are some, not everybody, and he's not saying every white middle-aged man. That's wrong. It's a distortion of what he's saying.
No, he's distorting the picture. He's distorting the picture. He's stirring up trouble.
Andrew, we are getting, as a country, into a bit of a complicated place, aren't we, about free speech and protests and what is right and what is wrong. It's clearly the case that if you are breaking the law on a protest, then there should be action, you should be arrested, and the government says that is the case with the Palestine Action marches because that's a prescribed organisation. But you had yesterday Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, saying pro-Palestine marches have become carnivals of hatred directed at the Jewish homeland. You have the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying police could get powers to ban protests. A month ago, politicians like Kemi Badenoch were saying free speech is being undermined in Britain. People should be allowed to say what they think. And now, a month later, we are talking about banning protests. How do we navigate our way through this? What should the government and the police do when you have people who are protesting but not breaking the law, but clearly causing great upset, in this case, to the Jewish community? Do we ban marches? Do we stop protests?
Free speech is it's a very difficult area, because if you believe in free speech, you really... Is it your speech or is it speech of other people? Some people will be saying things that you find offensive, you certainly disagree with. Well, if you believe in free speech, you're gonna believe in their right to say things you disagree with. Incitement to hate is rather different. Now, the question of the protests over the weekend, the Palestine protests, I would have certainly thought in Manchester the organisers should have been sensitive to the concerns of the Jewish community and just voluntarily called that off. In London, I think it's somewhat different. But it's a tricky area. There is a debate, but it's also, is it your speech or is it somebody else's speech?
But some of those marchers are chanting death to the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force. What they say, they want to kill more innocent Jewish men who are conscripted into the Israeli army. Is that that's what they were calling for in these marches? What a shocking, outrageous, disgusting thing to say, especially in the days after what happened in Manchester at that synagogue. And I've been to some of those marches in London, and I have seen the hatred, the anti-Jewish hatred. It's vile, and the police don't call it out because it's easy to keep the peace by not arresting them. Now, we saw a lot of people arrested this weekend, but I think the march in Manchester should have been called off. And if the organisers weren't sensible enough to realise that, the government should have intervened on that, because of that occasion, because of what happened at the synagogue.
Andrew, it's one thing to say the police should arrest somebody saying something which is hate speech. That's right. It's another thing to say, which is also fine, the organisers should have called it off. But you're saying that the whole protest, the whole march, should be banned by the police. The police should stop the protest.
I would have banned it in Manchester this weekend.
And so
I just think it was grossly insensitive, and I think the organisers didn't have the decency to realise they should have had the decision taken away from them.
Who decides to make these bans?
Well, it has to be a decision with the mayor, the Greater Manchester mayor, the Home Secretary.
Now, look, to give the mayor and the Home Secretary powers to ban marches you don't like.
It's a one-off because of what happened. Just because of what happened in Manchester, it was it was shocking what happened in Manchester, and I was shocked to think that thousands of people took to the streets banging the drum for Palestine.
Well, the cause hasn't gone away, and 12 people
they could have waited another week,
killed in Gaza.
They didn't need to do it.
I've said, if I was an organiser, which I'm not, they should have been sensitive in Manchester. But there's a battery of restrictions on demonstrations and marches now. You've got to get the routes approved with the police, stewarding where you go, and so on. So, for instance, if they'd have been going anywhere near a synagogue, it would have been routed away. And the organisers, certainly in London, have been quite compliant in that at all times. And I understand the discomfort and the unease and the fear of the Jewish community, because I've got friends, so I know that. But in a democracy, it is difficult to navigate these issues, but I'm against authoritarian bans in the way...
Well, it was a one-off in Manchester.
He, as a freedom-loving Tory, is now advocating.
We have to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed.